After a long day of intense meetings and non-stop administrative work, Sophia Johnson, the FBI director, finally felt a little relieved when she left the office. Rare moments like this, when she was able to leave the stifling space of the office, were truly a precious moment. Unlike other days, Sophia today decided to go through a deserted street, where the city lights gradually gave way to the peaceful space of the suburbs. This is how she often seeks tranquility after stressful working hours. Although she is used to the terrible pressure of work, a part of her always feels stressed at the end of a long day. Sophia knew that she had fought a lot of challenges to get to where she was, as a woman of color in a predominantly male and white environment, and that it wasn't easy for her to earn respect and maintain her status. But today, Sophia clearly senses something different. She needs a moment of silence to breathe, not to be an FBI director, not someone who always has to keep a tough face, but just an ordinary woman looking for serenity. She pulled slowly through the quiet streets, and when the faint street lights began to reflect the light on her car, she decided to stop on the side of the road, in a quiet neighborhood. The sense of peace that surrounds her allows her to breathe deeply, even though her worries, thoughts about work and responsibilities are always clinging. Reaching up to stroke her hair, she took a deep breath, feeling the silence that enveloped her. It's been a long time since she had a chance to really relax. Meetings, reports, important decisions. All have become an integral part of her life. But for now, Sophia just wants to forget about it all, to give herself a short period of time, a space where she cannot worry about the prying eyes or the heavy expectations that society and work place on her. This feeling, the feeling as if everything around her had faded, leaving her with a stream of thoughts running through her head, was what she needed more than anything at the moment. The silence made her realize that, no matter how strong she was just a human being, and sometimes people just needed small moments of relaxation to feel life again, to continue to fight the challenges ahead. Mark Thompson stood quietly in his study, the dim light from the night outside the window illuminating his thoughtful face. As a seasoned FBI inspector, he is used to analyzing every smallest detail in a case. Today, however, a vague premonition was making him uneasy. An inexplicable feeling of insecurity was clinging to his mind. Something was wrong happening in the cases he was investigating. Although everything seemed to be fine, Mark couldn't stop feeling that something was being hidden, that there was a truth out of his sight. He spent hours reviewing the evidence and documents, but there was no denying that there was a sense of doubt in him, as if something was being overlooked, something that neither he nor his colleagues realized. Mark knew that in this job, doubt was indispensable, but this time he couldn't ignore this feeling. His eyes glanced at the walls full of records and fragmentary evidence, but they all seemed to be faint, no longer as clear as before. He decided to call Sophia Johnson, the FBI director, whom he had always trusted. His indelible feelings were not normal, and he needed a different perspective. When the phone rang, he tried to reassure himself, but there was no denying the tension in his voice. Every call, every word of Sophia weighed heavily on him. But this time, he didn't just want to seek help with his work. He needed to find out the truth behind this feeling of insecurity. "Hi Mark, what's wrong?" Sophia's voice was calm but a little worried, perhaps also noticing the difference in the way he spoke. "Sophia, I can't explain, but there's something wrong with the cases we're investigating. I feel like something is being hidden, a truth that we don't see." "Hey, I need some time to figure it out," Mark said, his voice not hiding his nervousness. Sophia was silent for a moment, then replied, "If you feel that way, then you're probably right. Sometimes intuition is the most important thing. Do what is necessary, Mark. We will work together to address this." Mark put down the phone. The feeling of tension in his body still did not end. He knew he was at a critical juncture in this investigation, and suspicion could not be ignored. Time will be the deciding factor, and he must find out the truth before it's too late. The night was dark, but the faint street lights shone down on the quiet neighborhood. Mark Thompson walked quickly. His every step resounded in the silence, but his mind was filled with confused thoughts about the case. He got important information from Sophia Johnson, but suspicion still refused to leave him. He felt that something was waiting for him in front of him, a fact that he had to face, even if he didn't want to. In just a short time, he will meet his partner, Jason Collins, who he knows will not easily accept these doubts. As he walked to a street corner, Mark stopped, his eyes sweeping through the darkness, looking for something. Suddenly, a noise from behind startled him. He turned around, but did not react before a large man rushed over, blocking his path. The person doesn't seem to be who he's ever met, but his appearance, along with his aggressive expression, makes Mark realize that the situation is no longer simple. "What are you doing here?" the man said. His voice was deep, as if trying to threaten. Mark wasn't surprised, as he was so used to these kinds of stressful situations at work, but the feeling that things were going too far made him feel more stressed than usual. Mark looked at the man coldly, showing no signs of fear. "You're not what I'm looking for, but I can help if you need it," Mark replied, trying to maintain his composure in every word. The man smirked and stepped closer, his eyes flashing with ferocity. "Don't pretend, Thompson. I know who you are and I know what you're investigating. If you want to stay safe, it's best not to interfere too deeply." Mark didn't back down. He knew that it was not always possible to keep peace in such a confrontation, but also know that once things have gone too far, a head-on clash cannot be avoided. He quickly assessed the situation, preparing for the next steps. "I don't need your advice. You can go or let me do my thing," Mark said, his voice hard, unyielding. Immediately, the man swung his hand up, but Mark was able to dodge, quickly launching a precise punch to the opponent's body. The situation turns into a short but fierce struggle, with every punch and push containing unshakable determination. Mark knew that this meeting was not only a physical conflict, but also an affirmation that he would not give in to the threats of his work. Finally, the man stepped back, blood running down his lips, but his eyes were still full of defiance. "We'll meet again, Thompson," he said before disappearing into the darkness. Mark paused, breathing heavily, but his heart remained steady. This meeting is just a sign of the challenges to come. He could not stop, even if he faced increasing dangers. Mark Thompson walked into the parking lot, where he had parked his car early in the morning. The whole area seemed to be quiet, only the sound of the engines of cars passing in the distance. He walked towards the car, his hand in his pocket, not in a hurry. An important meeting was over, and he just wanted to get home quickly to get some more work done. But when he approached, his gaze stopped, and he saw another car parked right where he had parked since morning. This was not the first time he had encountered this situation, but this time an unpleasant feeling surged in him. Mark approached and immediately realized that the car did not have a permit to park in this area. The nearby light pole had a clear sign, but the car was still parked illegally. He bent down to look at the license plate, then immediately called the authorities. However, just as he turned his back to walk away, a man came out of the car. "What are you doing here?" the man asked, his expression not very good. Mark noticed this person's annoyed expression, and immediately realized that this was not an ordinary argument. "I am trying to confirm that your car is parked in the wrong place. This is a resident-only parking lot, and you don't have a permit," Mark replied calmly, but still feeling frustrated. He has encountered many similar situations at work, but this confrontation is not a case or an investigation. Simply an argument about parking in the wrong place. The man frowned, then walked closer, his tone getting harder and harder. "I don't need anyone to criticize the way I park. I'll just park here for a while, I won't bother anyone." Mark is not easily threatened. He was used to people like this. People who didn't accept being monitored or forced to follow the rules. He sighed, trying to stay calm. "I don't understand the problem. This is a matter of respect for general regulations. If you're not responsible, I'll have to contact the authorities." The man did not give up. He came closer, his face red with anger. "Who do you think you are to criticize me like that? This is just a parking lot." Mark could feel the tension in the air. He knew this might be just a minor argument, but he couldn't let such behavior become normal. "No one is an exception. I don't do it for you personally. This is about complying with regulations. The argument lasted a few minutes, but in the end, the man gave in, returning to his car with an irritated expression. Mark was in no hurry to leave, but stood there watching. He did not fight for victory or defeat, but to uphold the principles he believed in. Even if it's a small problem like illegal parking, every minor violation reflects a disrespectful attitude towards the community. When everything was over, Mark walked back to his car, feeling serene even though things weren't always easy. After the argument with the man ended, Mark Thompson stood alone in the parking lot, feeling the tension in his body. Although the confrontation did not last too long, the feeling of fatigue and frustration still did not let go of him. He knew what he needed to do next, and no one liked having to report things like this, but it was the only way to prevent wrongdoing from becoming a habit. Mark pulled out his phone and opened the app to call the report. He did not spend too much time presenting the incident to the staff on duty at the management agency's call center. "Hello, I would like to report a car parked illegally in the residential area. I tried to resolve the issue with the driver, but the situation became tense and it was impossible to continue negotiating," Mark began, his voice still cold but determined. The staff on the other end of the line received the information and promised to record it and send someone to check. Mark couldn't help but feel anxious. Will that man come back to continue messing around? Will your report be processed quickly? These questions kept circling in his mind. He sighed and pressed the call-off button when he heard the staff member on the other side confirm that he would handle the case. A sense of relief gradually swelled when he knew that at least he had done it right. While things may not go the way he wants, reporting the incident is a way to maintain order and protect the community. He raised his head and looked around, feeling like he had just joined a small but important struggle to defend the rules he believed were right. Actions like these, even small, can contribute to a healthier living environment. Mark stepped into his car, feeling his frustration fade away. He started the car, but before leaving he looked back again, confirming that no one had broken the rules again. As his car rolled out of the parking lot, he couldn't help but feel proud of his decision, even if it was a simple act. In his heart, it was a way to protect the values he had always respected. When Mark Thompson received his final financial statements from the company's accounting department, he felt a strange sense of anxiety rise in his heart. He was very detail-oriented, and when he looked at the numbers, he noticed that there were items that didn't match what he had previously reported. Some expenses are not clearly explained, while some revenues lack accompanying documentation. This made him feel suspicious. Mark spent hours sitting at his desk, researching every number, comparing bills and detailed reports. These figures aren't just dry numbers. They represent the hard work of hundreds of employees in the company, as well as the credibility and reputation that the company has built over the years. Every small mistake can lead to major consequences, and Mark can't ignore these questionable points. His sense of insecurity grew when he discovered payments to suppliers that were not fully recorded, as well as income that was missing from the report. He knew that if this problem was not addressed in time, it would become a bigger problem, affecting not only the company's finances but also the credibility of its partners and customers. Feelings of stress and fatigue overwhelmed him when he decided to face these flaws. Mark immediately sent an email to the accounting department, asking for clarification on the anomalies he had spotted. He knew he couldn't continue to turn a blind eye, and he couldn't risk letting this turn into a financial crisis. When the email was sent, Mark sat in silence, thinking about what he had done. Not only is he looking to solve the company's financial problems, but he also has to face the responsibilities of his role. The decisions he makes during this time will affect not only the company but also his career. He told himself to be careful and patient, because sometimes, financial problems are difficult to detect in the first place. He felt he was stepping into a big challenge, but he was also aware that only clarifying things would help the company avoid unnecessary risks. After discovering errors in his financial statements, Mark Thompson had no choice but to make a plan to deal with the situation. He could not allow these anomalies to continue to be hidden. Mark knew that in order to solve the problem thoroughly, He needed to gather clear evidence of financial fraud in the company, but this required careful calculation and a methodical strategy. He begins planning a covert investigation operation, a sophisticated siege that he hopes will unravel the secrets that the people in the company are trying to hide. Mark faces significant risks. If you make a mistake, not only the company but yourself can face serious consequences, possibly losing your position or worse. Therefore, every move must be very discreet and no one can doubt his true intentions. He decided to carry out this campaign with the help of a few trusted employees in the company who he knew who could work quietly and efficiently. He planned to install tracking tools, create fake exchanges to disrupt the company's financial system, thereby forcing the fraudsters to come to light. Mark analyzes every step with absolute care. He knew that the installation of surveillance systems could not leave a trace, as any suspicion could cause the enemy to change its strategy. He must also carefully investigate the employees he suspects, monitor their behaviors and habits, so that he can choose the right time and how to make an impact. All actions will have to be taken quickly and accurately, because if the opponent is detected first, this plan will completely fail. Finally, Mark prepares for this secret siege, although in his heart, a feeling of anxiety still cannot be removed. He knew it was a big gamble, but he was also well aware that, in order to protect the company and his reputation, he couldn't wait any longer. The plan has been drawn up, and everything will depend on his ability to act accurately and resolutely. As the investigation progressed, Mark Thompson became even clearer about the seriousness of the incident. The evidence he gathered not only pointed to financial fraud but also exposed other dark areas of the company, corruption and abuse of power that he could not have imagined. Financial statements are not only manipulated for personal gain, but also involve senior leaders, whom Mark previously respected. He began to feel clearly that these people were not only harming the company, but also destroying the very values on which it had been built. Mark felt like he was standing on a thin piece of land. Uncovering the truth is not easy. He knows that those who engage in these corrupt practices are not easy to take down. They had power, they had influence, and they had a plan to hide every trace. However, Mark couldn't stop. He began to connect the faint dots, tracing the traces left by the criminals. Each new piece of information helps him build a clearer picture, thereby identifying the masterminds and perpetrators of the crime. Mark knew that confronting the truth would not simply expose the offenders. Britain faces danger, with strong resistance from those in power. But in his heart, justice and righteousness have become the biggest motivation. He sought out trusted allies inside and outside the company who could help him stand up to the turbulence and defend the truth. With each specific piece of evidence, he began to expose corruption and abuse of power, leaving those responsible with no place to hide. In the end, Mark brings things to light, leaving both the company and the public to face the cruel truth. Corrupt leaders are arrested, and the losses they cause to the company are incalculable. Mark not only helped the company overcome a serious crisis, but also reinstated its moral values. Although it was an uphill battle, Mark knew that he had done the right thing, and in the end, justice had won. Mark Thompson feels tense but also determined as he prepares to participate in a secret meeting of the people behind corrupt practices in the company. He spent weeks gathering information and meticulously planning to be able to break into this meeting undetected. This is an important opportunity for him to gather first-hand evidence, which will help him break the siege of those who are manipulating behind the shadows. Mark knew that if he didn't prepare well, all the previous effort would fall apart. He pretends to be one of the close associates of the insiders, using his personal connections and the information he has gathered to convince the masterminds that he belongs to them. With careful preparation, Mark finally made it into the meeting without attracting attention. The dark room, illuminated only by dim lights, was where senior leaders met to discuss profiteering schemes. He kept his composure as he sat down with the powerful figures in the company, clearly feeling the tension and caution in the air. These people all have big secrets that need to be protected, and any mistake could get him discovered. Mark listens to every word, paying attention to every action and gesture. Every story, every decision they make contains important instructions, which is the missing piece of the puzzle in the picture that he has built before. With careful observation, Mark discovers many surprises. The schemes of fraud and financial manipulation that he had long suspected were finally confirmed. He clearly sees connections between senior executives within the company and outside teams who have helped them hide their criminal behavior. It felt like he was on the brink. Everything depended on patience and the ability to keep all the information he had private. However, Mark did not flinch. He records all the information on a secret storage device that he carries, making sure that no one finds out. The meeting lasted all night, but he knew that every minute there was an opportunity for him to get closer to the truth. Eventually, the meeting ends and Mark leaves with all the necessary evidence, carrying a sense of victory but also anxiety about what will happen next. What he has witnessed will change everything. With the evidence in hand, Mark Thompson knows that he must now fight not only to bring the truth to light, but also to protect the innocent and restore justice. This fight is not easy, as confronting people with far-reaching power and influence in the company is a huge challenge. However, he couldn't back down. To avoid retaliatory actions, Mark decided not to disclose the information to the press immediately, but instead, he teamed up with a team of lawyers experienced in corruption cases to plan his actions. With each passing day, Mark felt the tension in his heart, but was also well aware that this was the decisive moment. He spends hours researching records, comparing financial data, and preparing legal arguments to be able to present clearly and coherently in court. At times, the feeling of fatigue makes him want to give up, but he thinks of the poor workers, the victims of the system he is fighting for change. He knew that this was not only for himself, but also for justice. Meanwhile, the powerful people in the company are trying every way to hide their wrongdoing. Mark was aware of the threat from their side. Unexpected calls, implicit warnings, even attacks on the honor of him and his companions. But Mark wasn't succumbed. He knew that the truth always had a way to burn, and he was determined to stand up to change everything. Finally, when the case went to trial, Mark stood in front of the jury, with irrefutable evidence in his hands. He looked at the faces of the people sitting there, feeling that their confident eyes had begun to weaken. He presented every detail sharply, from the copies of financial documents to the illegal exchanges he recorded. His words exposed the whole truth, not only about corrupt practices but also about the power system that has helped them survive. The fight doesn't stop at the courts. Mark realized that, even if the court handed down a fair sentence, the company and those behind it could still seek to appeal, taking advantage of the legal loophole. So he continues to fight relentlessly, leveraging the support of civil society organizations and media outlets to pressure and push for change. It feels like he's fighting a long battle, but Mark can't stop, because he knows that this change will not only help the company but also open up hope for those who are oppressed under the shadow of corruption.